Hey everyone, welcome to another video about 5G home internet. This is Nate and this is the Nader Tater channel. Now here I have the latest Verizon gateway for their 5G home internet service. You might have recognized their older one, which I have both of their white cubes that look identical on the outside, but they're actually different brands and different internals. And so this one here is the ASCII, or it's shorthand on the SKU as ASK. And then there's also a Arcadian, what is shorthand ARC on the actual SKU on there. The big difference here is actually, obviously, one's gray, one's white, and one's taller than the other. There's a couple key specs on the kind of capabilities as well that I'll go into, and I'll go into all the settings and show you what all settings you can change on this new one and what's different about it versus this other one. And really, for the most part, these are the ones that they send out to customers that get either 4G service or their 5G sub-6 service, which means things like their C-band or their 5G extended or 5G nationwide, I think is what Verizon markets it as. But those are the sub-6 gigahertz bands. Now, they also have, Verizon has millimeter wave, but that's really specific areas, typically in urban areas. And for those, they actually do have some other gateways. Some of them actually have like an LV65, which is external or exterior receiver they put out there, and they have these other units as well. But this is what most of their customers are going to get. They have about 3 million customers, I think, right now with 5G home internet. So this one here, this one, white one, is not plugged in, but when it is plugged in, there's a little white dot up here, and it does change color. I think it goes red, I think it does green, and it can flash or it can stay solid, which indicates some information to you. This one's a little bit better because you can see it actually has a couple bars. The bottom one, which looks like a Wi-Fi signal, is not surprisingly telling you that the Wi-Fi is on. And then the one above it that looks like signal bars is the signal bars for your cellular connection. So this one it takes in cellular connection and then it sends out Wi-Fi connection. So this gives you a little bit of information. You can see I'm down here in my basement. I do not get good service in the basement, and it shows you only one bar. Overall, I would say this bar does not give you a whole lot of information. I'll go into the actual settings page, which you get some much more useful signal information in there as well. Other than that, on the bottom of the unit, they're actually very similar looking, where they have a power connection. They have 2 Ethernet ports, and then they have, this one has a USB connection and a reset button. It also has a little flap that you can open up, and there's not much in there other than another USB port. I'm pretty sure that one's for flashing the actual firmware when Verizon does it, so it's not really made for the customer per se. And I don't think that USB port really does anything. It might provide power at best. That is almost identical to the bottom of this one here, where it also has a silicone flap and a hidden USB port in there, power to Ethernet ports. This one, because it's the ASCII model, it actually does have a physical SIM slot that goes right there. So you could actually take that SIM out and put it in another unit. This one does not have a SIM slot down here. I'm going to take this apart and make sure there's not a SIM hidden inside of the unit. If there's not, that would mean that it's a electronic SIM or eSIM. That means you can't take it out and put it in some third-party gateway, which I love doing that. And the Arcadian Cube doesn't have that either. It has an eSIM as well. So let's first hop into the settings and connection, and let me start with kind of what I did for the setup. There's not much to it. You technically can use the My Verizon app to do the setup, but really all you have to do is plug it in. You have to wait for it to, it'll be blinking a light there for, probably like 2 minutes where it boots up and starts. But then once these lights kick on, that tells you that the Wi-Fi is active, and hopefully you have a signal as well for the cellular. Alright, so on the bottom of the unit in the white, it does have a QR code that you can actually scan to add the Wi-Fi to your device, especially a tablet or a phone. But you can also just search for that Wi-Fi SSID there and type in the password manually. I already have mine saved and actually adjusted a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and connect to it so that I am connected. And then I can go in here down below it. It gives you a URL, which is 192.168.1.1, and it gives you a password there for it as well. So you can go to your browser and type that in, and then we can get into the real settings. Alright, so once I was connected via Wi-Fi, I typed in that address and then I hit go. Now, the first time you do it, you'll actually get a warning typically that says, hey, this website's not safe. You just click advanced or see more settings and then click continue to go to it, and that's just a HTTPS issue they have. But now you need to type in the password that is also on the bottom of this unit to sign in. Alright, so here is the basic layout. Now, this is very interesting because I had such a hard time actually getting a hold of one of these units from Verizon, and I didn't want to open a new line because they have a new speed threshold. I won't get into that, but I actually bought this off eBay used, and I figured it would not work. The service would not be connected. Lo and behold, I plug in. It actually has service and the internet works, which I was shocked because I'm not paying for it. But we'll figure out what happens there, or if I need to talk to Verizon about that. But in here you can see very basic. We can go to status, and this is where this is a lot better than the little status bars down here because it's telling you a lot more information. And that is, we scroll down here and it's showing me that on my 4G LTE signal strength I have a -75 for a signal strength. Now with this being dBs, actually the lower the number is from a numerical standpoint, meaning closer to 0, so a less negative number is actually a better signal strength. So like -100 would be a worse signal than this. Now you see on my 5G I get 0 signal at all, so that when I go upstairs I get signal. I typically get around 80 for the 4G, or -80 for the 4G, and then about -90 or -93 for the 5G, and that's typically good enough for me to get 300 megabits per second down and the 20 up, which is what the standard Verizon 5G home is capped out for the previous one. But from what I've seen and what appears to be the case here is this one is part of the new lineup, and I think it's 100 megabits per second download for cap and 10 megabits per second upload for cap, which is pretty disappointing that they slowed it down that far because their network has the capability to go faster. But that is where I think they are capped at. But if we go in here to, let's go back home, we go to Wi-Fi, we go to primary network. Alright, so for Wi-Fi, I typically like to split my 2.4 and my 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. I don't actually like to have them on the same SSID because a lot of older devices have trouble actually figuring out that connection, and things like printers or TVs might have trouble connecting. So I actually run my home Wi-Fi through a TP-Link Omada setup, and I use the Verizon gateway just as a modem, and I typically turn off Wi-Fi or put in IP pass-through mode. I'll talk about that here in a second with these settings. But the one thing I do want to say about the Wi-Fi on this new gray one is that it's a lot better. So these cubes really don't have the best Wi-Fi coverage. It's okay for most homes, but really you want to place the gateway wherever it gets the best cellular signal, and that very well most likely is not the center of your house, which will be the ideal location for getting Wi-Fi through your house. So you might be on one of the corners of your house and not get good signal on the other corner. But I must say this one is pretty impressive with the Wi-Fi range. So this one also has Wi-Fi 6E, and that's where you see here on the Wi-Fi settings you have a 6 gigahertz band. Now it doesn't tell you the warning here, but when you do the setup, if you try to click on the 6 gigahertz channel, it does have some problems or downsides to it, and that's that it forces WPA3 to be one of the security protocols, and it makes it less compatible with some of the older devices. So there are some drawbacks to that 6 gigahertz channel, but that does provide a lot more bandwidth and capability for Wi-Fi, at least for your newer devices that support it. But regardless of that 6 gigahertz, this one has much better range for Wi-Fi. So where I place these in my house is on a 3rd floor loft space up by the attic, and that gets signal all the way down here in the basement from up there. So it's on the 3rd floor. You go down 1 floor to the 2nd floor, another floor to the 1st floor, and then in the basement down below, and it still gets good signal. And in fact, I did the speed test, and I still got basically the same speed I get up at the attic. So that's about 100 down and 10 or so up. And again, that is throttled by this unit and Verizon, but I'm able to get that now. If I go to the corner of my basement, then the signal does drop slower, and then eventually it'll go to the far corner, it does drop away. But still, that's 3 floors down. That's very impressive Wi-Fi coverage for this unit. So this also has a guest network, which you can have out there, so you can set up a new name for that for your guests, as well as your Internet of Things is what IoT stands for. And so both of those, guest and IoT, typically they limit the devices on that from being able to talk to your other devices that are on your primary network. And then WPS, or the Wi-Fi protected setup, this is something that you can do. There's a button on the back of the unit to press, and that will allow you to use that option to connect some devices quickly. In here you can see your devices that are connected. Obviously it's just my tablet right now. Alright, but to get to the real settings, you want to go to the Advanced tab. So up at the top, click over to Advanced. You might not realize a lot changes at first, but now if you go back to those same places where we just were, like you go to the primary network now you can click on or off this self-organizing network, and this is what I was talking about, band steering. So you can turn that off, and now what it's going to do is allow you to have different names for 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, and even the 6 gigahertz. And this is really useful because maybe you have only a couple devices that can use the 6 gigahertz frequencies, and therefore you can have just them connect to that specific one. So I don't know why it's taking so long, but it's applying those settings. But this would allow me to go in here, and typically what I do is I just do like a dash or underscore 5 gigahertz or dash 6 gigahertz, and then I know which ones are which. Alright, so in here, once it established that, now I have more settings. When I drop down the little gear icon, now I can tell it lots of different things as far as the group key. Then there's the Wi-Fi QoS, which stands for quality of service. So this is where it's trying to prioritize specific data streams, namely what you can see is like voice, video conferencing, audio streaming over other devices or other data types out there, so it gives you a better experience. And then you can have that power save, which should help for things like tablets and phones, actually lower power consumption. And then security here, now you can change if you want WPA3, 2, or none. And again, if you combined all these, or what they call it, the self-organizing network combined, and you have the 6 gigahertz, it would make them all WPA3, which a lot of older devices don't support. So that's where I think it's good to be able to separate it. So this is something you should consider doing if you're going to use this device for your Wi-Fi in your house. Alright, so the guess is the same. IoT is really the same. I don't think it gives you any advanced settings with it. Again, WPS is the same, but radio management is a new one. This is nice because it gives you some analysis here of what other Wi-Fi signals or channels are out there, and if there's a lot of interference. So you can see, for me, I do have some other Wi-Fi devices out there, and it's going through here and helping automatically pick what channel it is. So if you're living in a place where you have your neighbor's Wi-Fi, this can help you. You can actually rescan up here at the top and pick a channel that works the best for you. So if we go down here to devices, again we get the same information that we had before. Okay, and then in here you do get UPnP, or universal plug and play. You can enable or disable that, and then you get a lot of features here for security and firewall. So this is where by default, this is all default settings in here, so it's all normal, but you can move that to low security if you have your own firewall, or if you really want to lock it down, you can go to high security in here for both IPv4 and IPv6 separately. And there's access control, where you can make rules for different devices when they can access based off like schedule or time. So this is kind of a parental controls type thing. DMZ host, this is something I really prefer actually over IP Pass Through, which I'll show you later. But DMZ is actually stands for demilitarization or demilitarized zone, and that is how you can send all of the inbound traffic that comes to this modem and send it to a specific device, typically your own Wi-Fi router, which is what I would do. And by doing that, it doesn't go into full pass-through mode, but it does send all the traffic, and it basically removes any firewall and stuff from this device. So if you had your router hooked up, you could then figure out what its IP address is. You can set it as static and then tell it, hey, I want to make that my IPv4 and IPv6 DMZ host. So here, if you click enable, then you can see that you could pick your IP address that would be your router, but right now I obviously don't have one hooked up. Okay, pinholes, you could create those for IPv6. You can also do port forwarding rules here, where you can just you can name an application, do the ports, and the protocols of it, TCP, UDP, or whatnot, and then you can add those in there. You can have different rules for different protocols of what you want them to do. Let's see give you an example here of the settings. Alright, it also has port triggering rules that you can do, and it has a schedulers rule. So this would be for activating different firewall settings based off a schedule. This is something by default is off. Typically, if you know about it, then you would know if you want it on or off. If you don't, just leave it off. And then in here in the network settings, you have this ARP table, which honestly I don't even know really what the point of that one is. Here in the dynamic DNS, this is useful obviously if you know about these services, you will have it, and this will give you a public URL that you can go to get access back to your home, even though your public WAN IP changes. Here you can see your IPv4 distribution list. You can also see IPv6, as well as decide if you really want IPv6 to be enabled or not. Alright, so now you have this network connections page. Now, at first it looks like it doesn't have a lot of information there, but this is actually where a couple key settings are really buried in there, and you want to have some look around at these different ones. So the first thing I'm going to do here is you can go up here to like this network office, and if you click on it, it shows you some more things. So once you get into here, again, it looks like there maybe is just some information in there, but if you pay attention to the top, there's another settings ones that you can click on. This is like a hidden way to get into these different settings. Alright, so now we get some advanced features that you actually might want to change. MTU is one of them, and you might, but definitely the IP address range, you might want to change that if you have a specific need to be on a different IP address. Alright, so here for the IP pass through, I can click that on, and now if I hit save, what it's going to do is it's going to make it much harder for me to get back into this device, because it's going to turn off the Wi-Fi. It's only going to enable the LAN port 2, so the Ethernet port on there, and then it because it's doing the pass through to that Ethernet cable, it means that you can't type in the 192.168.1.1 address anymore to get access to it. You will have to get the WAN address that your router or your device gets, and then you have to go up, I think it's up one digit at the end, or it could be down one digit. I think it's up one digit though, and that would be the address you would need to log back into this device. So let's just make up a number. If you were getting a WAN IP with this pass through of 72.100.5.20, you would do 72.100.5.21 to get into this device. If that doesn't work, then try .19 at the end, and that will be how you could log back into this and maybe turn off the IP pass through or change other settings. So I'm not going to enable that, but that is how you would click that and click save, and that would enable IP pass through through that LAN port too. So this is where the DHCP server, you can change the range of IPs there, and you can change the lease time if you really wanted to. And then there's a routing table. I think you can go into some of these here, and we can click edit for like this 5 gigahertz, and this is going in to that 5 gigahertz, and now you can change some settings in there, turn it on and off, and then bottom you can hit settings again. So this is, I think, the third time I've hit settings inside of this. So now you can actually change some stuff like MTU specifically for different channels out there. Alright, I think that's everything I wanted to show in the network settings page. Let's go in here to Ethernet and just check it out to see if it has anything special there. It doesn't look like anything unique. Nope. Alright, so network objects. Alright, so this would allow you to make rules for a specific network object. That's kind of a advanced configuration there. Here is the port configuration, which I think you just want to leave this on Auto, it is interesting though, because that's another interesting point, is it looks like this allows 2.5 gig connections, which would make a lot of sense. I think this one only has the 1 gig connections for the Ethernet port, so that's maybe another unique thing about this gray unit here. Alright, so in this routing page, you can create new routings if you really wanted to, but now we're going to Diagnostics and Monitoring, and now you can see, how much data you've used or bandwidth you've used up, and you can go by on the LAN which devices and how much they're actually using themselves. You can also do some ping tests out there to make sure that you're pinging correctly. You can go in here, System Logs, and you can see Security, Advanced Logs, Firewall Log, WAN Log. So lots of different things in here that you can look at. Alright, system-wide connection. This one is kind of a nice summary page, really, I think, because it shows you through all your different networks, if they're on, if they're off, what type of connection, like their broadband connection there, obviously being cellular is good to see. And it tells you all your different packets, if they're received, and have errors. So that might, if you're getting errors, you can go down here at the bottom and look at, okay, if all my errors are on, let's say my 5 gigahertz, I can kind of look into that a little closer and see what's going on there. But I can click here in this broadband connection as well and go see that one. Alright, here's the backhaul logging. I'm going to take a stab in the dark here. I think this must be for their network extender, because that's how I typically think about backhaul. You have another access point, and then how does it get signal back to this main unit? So I'm thinking that that would be what this is logging, is your network extender working well or not. But that's just kind of a little bit of an educated guess. Alright, system status is kind of boring. We've already kind of looked at this. Date and time, if your time was wrong, you're on the wrong time zone, you could change it. That might be for someone that is close to one of the borders for a different time. Sometimes it may be based off the way the cellular network connects you, it might think you're in a different time zone. You can factory reset it here. LED brightness, so you can change how bright these are here. And then you can reboot the device right here from the admin. Then you can allow remote administration. This would allow someone to log into the admin page from the WAN side, not just from the LAN side, which obviously has some security risks there. And then here in the system settings, you can change the host name. You can change things like the admin password to log into this web interface. You can also change some of the settings as far as if does it ask for the password or how long the sessions last for. So that's really the overview of all the settings that are in here. Some of the key ones that are not allowed to change that maybe people do care about is actually changing a DNS server. That some people like to be able to have their own DNS server, and that is not allowed to be changed here. But you can change that on your own personal router or through like a firewall or some other device like that as well. So stay tuned for lots more videos of this device. I'm going to probably take it apart. I gotta look for a SIM card inside of it, look at external antennas and some other devices. If you have questions, please put them down below in the comments, and then check out the rest of my channel for lots more videos on 5G home internet and lots of other interesting topics to watch.